I'm interested in those steps being taken. We're now seeing just sub 31% of board seats in the S&P 500 held by women. That's below Europe, below Australia, but still an improvement. Is it sustainable improvement?
Caroline, that is absolutely the right question to jump in on. And I just want to start off by saying that this whole issue of diversity, and people say, well, why is it important? Are we just trying to meet some regulatory requirements or tick some boxes? And in fact, it is really core to what makes for a successful board. And that's the whole reason Boardspan exists. So diversity is a really important part of the equation, but it's really trying to create boards that contribute more to all of their constituents. As far as the question that you posed on the 31%, it's great progress. But there is some risk of sort of being asymptotic and having those numbers flatten out a little bit, because you have to think about the different pressures. How did we get to where we are? What's driving it? And what are the blockers coming forward?
I'm interested in that because we sit here as two white women. And I've spoken at length many a time with the likes of Ursula Burns, who has her own focus on board diversity, and particularly as a black woman. She said, look, white women have made inroads, but people of colour haven't. We're starting to see improvement there as well, but not enough to the same extent. I think back in 2019, it was, 1.5% of board seats in the Russell 3000 were women of colour. That's an appalling statistic. How are we seeing that change?
Yeah, no, it is appalling, and there is progress with a lot more that needs to come. You know, the statistics show us that the people of color, more broadly, what's called the underrepresented communities, are up to 17%, which is some progress from last year. But I think the issue is really people focusing on, why do I want to bring this person on the board above and beyond the diversity characteristics? It is so critical for boards to think about the challenges ahead of the organization, their broader definition of constituents that we're sort of all a little bit more woke about, and the challenges they're going to have. And the value of having diverse board members is to get diverse thinking. These are a different set of challenges and problems as the world has changed. We've all experienced that over the last 2 years. And what serves that organization best is to bring what I call a tapestry of thinking. And that's where diversity really adds a lot of value. And I think when it comes to people of color, other ways to consider underrepresentation by gender, and a combination, you're really getting that much more, frankly, sophisticated thinking and less monolithic thinking.
I mean, just think what the Federal Reserve itself has just been through. When we look at the seats of the Federal Open Monetary Committee, Philip Jefferson just being added, black man, who, of course, not only we think about a diverse, in terms of statement, what we see, but also the intellect that he brings, the writing he's done when it comes to poverty, when it comes to coming from different backgrounds. Lisa Cook being added at the Fed, Sarah Bloom Raskin as well, she comes with a wealth of experience when you come to environment as well. How do we build that sort of thinking in an earlier time? I mean, the Federal Reserve has been under a lot of pressure itself because it needs to think more from a more diverse, inclusive nature from the labor market. How are people being set from a pay perspective? Are we starting to see real, tangible needs being put on executives to ensure that they think in a diverse manner?
Yeah, there's a few things going on. And you know, I think there was a little bit of a tipping point when the Business Roundtable redefined who are the constituents, and saying it's not just all shareholder primacy. Obviously, investors still play an important role. But when we think about the critical importance of a board's responsibility to employees, to customers, to the planet, that's making us realize we need that talent that brings that additional expertise, that broader perspective. So I think that is one of the considerations that goes into it. But there are other things that are going to help move that along. And then fighting it, unfortunately, on the other side are things like, this really interesting NASDAQ rule that came out last year. And now it's up to 17 states' AGs that have filed suits against NASDAQ. And so now we're saying, like, whoa, that's a blocker. What's driving, that's what worries me about how much progress we can continue to make. I still think there's a lot of progress ahead of us. It would just be nice if we continued to have more wind at our back.
And the media need to keep shining a light on statistics such as that, where Charter Communications has 7% of its board as women. Not good enough needs to be sort of the framing. But I'm interested in sort of whether or not people so often say, oh, a pipeline problem, but there isn't a pipeline problem. It's just you have to be more diverse in the way in which you think about the talent you need. It doesn't need to always have been a CEO. It doesn't need to always have been a C-level executive even. How are you seeing people think more broadly about the experience and the expertise they need to ensure that they've got the right people around the table that don't look like themselves?
You know, that's exactly right. So I've always felt that it was a demand problem, not a supply problem. And so we always work with our clients around intention. What problem are you trying to solve? What are the needs? What are the challenges that are going to be coming up, or the opportunities you want to take advantage of? And with this world getting so much more complex, that's exactly the situation where you're thinking, you know what? Somebody who's really helped grow an international business, somebody that understands business disruption, somebody who's a true product expert. I'm thinking of one of the clients that we're working with, a company that recently went public called Meridian Link, and they specifically knew that what they needed in the case of one new board member was somebody who's really a true product expert, and in the case of their next new board member, somebody who understood how to go to market in financial services. With those two requirements, we were able to put two diverse women, what we call double diverse, on that board in the course of 2 months. There's tons of talent out there. It's about asking the right questions.